It was just past midnight. The city had gone quiet, slipping into that strange hour between life and sleep where even the lights seemed hesitant to shine. The occasional car rolled by, headlights washing over the empty streets like ghosts. Most windows were dark. Only the dim hum of street lamps and the rustle of dry leaves stirred the silence. Down one forgotten alleyway, beside a construction site fenced off with rusted metal, a small sound broke the stillness, a sound almost too soft. To hear Dot, it was a whimper, a weak, cracked cry that barely escaped the throat of a small creature lying curled on the cold concrete. The sound of suffering, of desperation, of pain that had gone ignored for too long. There, tucked between a pile of broken bricks and a discarded tire, lay a tiny puppy. He wasn't more than 2 months old. Thin, fragile. His fur, which might have once been a soft golden brown, was now matted with dirt and grime. Blood had dried around a wound on his back leg, the fur stiff and crusted. His body trembled, not just from the night's biting chill, but from fear, pain, and exhaustion. No one knew how he had ended up there. Perhaps he had been born on the streets, one of many from an unwanted litter. Perhaps someone had once held him, cared for him, then thrown him away when the responsibility became too much. Or maybe he had wandered too far from his mother, only to be hit by a speeding motorbike and left behind in a world too busy to care. All he knew was that it hurt. Every breath burned. His belly was hollow, aching with hunger. His leg throbbed with a pain that felt sharp and deep, and his body refused to move, stiffened from cold and trauma. But still, he tried. He cried out again, a sound that barely echoed in the narrow alley. He lifted his head an inch before it, dropped back down. His tongue lolled from his mouth, dry and cracked. He waited. Footsteps echoed from the main road. A pair of teenagers passed by, laughing loudly. One of them glanced toward the alley. The puppy whimpered. "Did you hear that?" The boy asked. The girl shrugged. "Probably just a rat or something." They walked on. Later, a man in a suit walked briskly past, talking on his phone. He was angry, muttering about missed meetings and deadlines. The puppy let out another cry, softer this time. The man slowed, turned slightly, then shook his head, and kept going. The puppy watched him go with heavy eyes. His body was still, his breathing shallow, his cries grew less frequent. Each time he whimpered, it took more effort. The world blurred around him. The light from the street lamp seemed to spin slowly, then fade. His body was beginning to shut down. He was too weak to crawl, too cold to fight. His tiny heart beat faintly against his ribs. He had cried for help, again and again and again. No one stopped. Across the street, behind a row of old shops, an elderly woman opened a window to toss out dirty dishwater. She paused, hearing something faint. She squinted. Into the night. Nothing moved. Just shadows. She shook her head. "Must be the wind," she muttered, and closed the window. The puppy had no idea what wind was. He only knew that no one came. Somewhere in the darkness, a cat padded by and hissed at him, arched its back, then disappeared into a trash bin. A loud bang from a passing truck startled the puppy and made him cry out just once before collapsing again. He was beginning to understand something. This world was not kind. Around 2 a.m., a light rain began to fall. It wasn't heavy, just a cold drizzle that soaked the streets and made everything feel colder. Tiny droplets landed on the puppy's fur. He didn't react. He was barely aware anymore. His tiny chest rose and fell, slower and slower. A stray dog passed the alley, sniffing the air. He glanced at the puppy, paused, then walked away. The city slept. Time passed strangely. Somewhere a car backfired. A door slammed. Far away. A baby cried in a warm apartment, and still the puppy lay, unmoving. A log. That's what one passerby later called him when they were interviewed. I thought it was just a log or trash. Didn't even look alive. The puppy didn't know how long he had been there. He didn't know what time it was anymore. He didn't know that he was dying. But he knew that no one had come out at 4:12 a.m. A delivery driver parked his van on the curb nearby. He grabbed a box and began heading toward the store. He paused when he heard the faintest sound like a high-pitched sigh. Curious, he took a few steps toward the alley. His flashlight flicked on. The beam of light swept over the trash, the bricks, and finally, the motionless body of the puppy. He stared. Is that? He stepped closer, but then pulled back. Nah, probably already dead, he muttered, and turned away. The flashlight clicked off. The alley went dark again. It would be sunrise in 2 hours. But for the puppy, there might not be enough time left. His breathing had grown so faint that even a breeze could have hidden it. He didn't cry anymore. He didn't shiver. His eyes were open, barely, but they saw nothing. He was slipping away, not from one single wound, but from the weight of it all, from being forgotten, from being ignored, from being passed by, and still, the city moved on. But somewhere else, 2 streets over, someone was awake. A woman named Maya was ending her night shift at the local hospital. She worked in the ER, where she had helped bandage broken arms, comforted a sobbing child, and watched a man breathe his last. She was used to pain. But she had also learned to look for the quiet cries, the ones no one else heard. She stepped out into the night with her scarf wrapped tight and her grocery bag in hand. Her feet ached. Her back hurt. She just wanted to go home and sleep, but something strange tugged at her. A sound. She paused mid-step. There it was again, faint, almost lost beneath the sound of the breeze. A cry. No. Not a human cry. It was softer, smaller. Animal? She turned, her head slowly, eyes scanning the street. Nothing. But that pull in her chest didn't fade. She walked forward, then turned into the alley, uncertain why. Her eyes adjusted to the dark. She took cautious steps, the plastic of her grocery bag crinkling with each movement. Then she saw a dot. At first, she thought it really was just trash. A dark shape, still, but her instincts wouldn't let her move on. She stepped closer. And then she saw the eyes, barely open, glazed, but alive. Oh my God, she whispered. She dropped to her knees. A heartbeat. She reached out and touched the small, trembling body. He was so cold it shocked her fingers. So still, she thought he might be beyond saving. But then he blinked. Baby. Her voice cracked. You're alive? She looked around. No one. Just her and this tiny, broken life. She tore off her scarf and wrapped it around him, lifting him gently. He didn't protest. Didn't even flinch. He was all but gone. But now he wasn't alone. Maya stood up, cradling the puppy close, his face buried against her chest. Her grocery bag lay forgotten behind her as she rushed to her car. She didn't know what she'd do, didn't know if it was too late. But one thing was certain. She wasn't going to be the one who walked past. Maya drove like someone trying to outrun time itself. The streets were still mostly dark, and her headlights cut through the drizzle like blades of mercy. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, not from cold but from fear. The puppy wrapped in her scarf hadn't moved since she'd picked him up. He didn't whimper. He didn't twitch. His tiny chest rose and fell so slowly she had to keep glancing down just to be sure he was still breathing. Come on, sweetheart, she whispered, one hand resting protectively over his tiny body. Stay with me, okay? Her hospital badge still hung around her neck, swaying with every turn. Her shoes were soaked. Her hair clung to her forehead. But none of that mattered. All that mattered was the fragile little life she held close, so cold, so still, and yet somehow still hanging on. The closest animal clinic was a 15-minute drive away if the roads were clear. Maya didn't even remember making half the turns. She just followed instinct, praying with every heartbeat that she wasn't. Already too late. When she pulled into the lot, it was still closed. The lights were off. A closed until 8 a.m. sign glowed faintly in the window. It was barely 5 o'clock. Maya slammed the car door and ran to the entrance, the puppy pressed against her chest. She knocked, first gently, then frantically. Then she pounded. Her breath came out in fog as she called out, voice cracking, "Please, somebody, I need help." For a moment, nothing, then a flicker. A shadow moved inside. Seconds later, the door unlocked with a metallic click and opened just a crack. A sleepy-eyed young vet tech looked out, confused and alarmed. "We're closed, ma'am. He's dying," Maya cried. "Please, just look at him. I found him in the alley. He's freezing. I don't know how long he's been there." The vet tech looked down and saw the tiny bundle wrapped in the soaked scarf. He opened the door fully, his expression shifting. "Bring him in. Now." The fight begins. The clinic snapped to life. Lights flicked on. Machines buzzed. The tech called upstairs to wake Dr. Hannah, the on-call veterinarian, who appeared minutes later with her hair in a messy bun and her lab coat half-buttoned. Maya stood by as they unwrapped the puppy gently and laid him on a warm pad under a heating lamp. His eyes didn't open. His limbs were stiff. His breathing barely registered. "He's in bad shape," Dr. Hannah murmured. "Severely hypothermic, malnourished, possibly shock. We'll start 4 fluids and warm him slowly. We can't rush it or his body will crash." Maya nodded wordlessly. "Can you stay?" the doctor asked. "I'm not going anywhere," Maya whispered. They worked together in silence. Maya didn't have any medical training for animals, but she knew how to hold fragile bodies, how to monitor a pulse, how to stay calm in the presence of suffering. She held a small oxygen mask near his face while the vet inserted a catheter into his tiny leg. The vet tech brought over a syringe filled with warm glucose. "Is there a name?" he asked softly. Maya blinked. No. I just found him." He nodded and wrote unknown male pup on the chart. But in her heart, Maya whispered, "Shadow?" Because that's what he'd been, hidden in the dark, overlooked, forgotten. Waiting in the silence. Time passed strangely. The clock ticked forward, but Maya didn't feel it. She sat beside the metal table, watching Shadow's chest rise and fall, still shallow, still uncertain, but there, one breath. Then another. At one point, Dr. Hannah offered her tea. Maya barely drank it. Her eyes never left the little bundle lying beneath the heat lamp. Around 6:30 a.m., Shadow moved. Not much, just the twitch of a paw. But Maya gasped. He moved. The vet smiled gently. "That's a good sign." His temperature's rising slowly. "We'll need to see if he responds when he wakes up." "But he might not?" Maya asked. "He's been through hell. And he's very young. But he's fighting." Maya looked down at him. "So am I." The first blink at 7:42 m. Shadow's eyes fluttered open. Maya leaned in, heart pounding. His gaze was glassy, unfocused, but he was awake. "Hey," she whispered. "Hey, baby, you're safe now." His head turned weakly toward her voice. One ear twitched. He made a small sound, not a cry, but something soft, almost questioning. Maya reached out slowly, letting him sniff her hand. "You remember me?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm the one who didn't walk past." Dr. Hannah came in and smiled when she saw him awake. "Let's see how he reacts to touch." She gently pressed her fingers near his ribs. He flinched. A good sign, he felt it. She checked his injured leg, frowning at the swelling. Not broken, just badly bruised. We'll wrap it and monitor him for infection." Maya let out a shaky breath. Shadow blinked up at her, his eyes clearer now. He didn't smile, dogs don't smile, but his gaze softened, and his tail gave the tiniest twitch. Maya laughed through her tears. Beginning the healing by 10 a.m., the clinic opened officially. Shadow had been moved to a recovery cage with soft towels, a heating pad, and an 4-bag clipped beside him. Maya sat on a bench near the cage, her coat draped over her lap. Dr. Hannah knelt beside her. "We'll need to keep him here for a few days," she said gently. "He's not out of danger yet. His system is still very weak and he hasn't eaten, but with fluids and warmth, he has a chance." Maya nodded. "I'll come back every day. You don't have to. We'll take care of him." "I want to," Maya said. "I need to." Dr. Hannah smiled knowingly. "I see that." The weight of guilt later that afternoon, Maya went home, but only for a shower and change of clothes. Her apartment felt strange, almost too quiet. She stood in her bathroom, staring into the mirror as hot water steamed the room. Her hands trembled. Why did no one stop? Why did it take her to see him? She thought of all the people who had passed him, heard him, ignored him. "I almost didn't stop," she whispered to her reflection, and that thought crushed her the most. She had nearly been like the rest, almost turned her head, almost let him die alone. The guilt didn't come from what she did. It came from how easily she could have done nothing. Back to him that evening, she returned to the clinic with a container of soft-boiled chicken and some warm broth. Shadow was asleep when she arrived, his tiny frame curled up on the blanket. But when she knelt beside the cage and softly whispered his name, his ears perked. He opened his eyes. Recognition sparked. His tail wagged just once, slow and unsure, but it moved. Maya smiled. "There you are." She reached in gently and let him lick her fingers. He was still weak, but he was present. Alive. Naming the bond the next morning, Maya asked the vet, "Can I name him officially?" Dr. Hannah chuckled. "I had a feeling you'd ask." She filled out the paperwork and wrote, "Name Shadow Owner Maya Anwar." And just like that, a life once ignored, once left to die in the rain, now had a name, a home, a chance. The clinic had become Maya's second home. Each day, after her hospital shift, she stopped by with a thermos of warm broth, a pocket of treats, and a voice full of gentle encouragement. And each day, Shadow got stronger. By the end of the week, he was sitting up. His leg, still bandaged and tender, wasn't holding weight yet, but his eyes had changed. What had once been dull and distant now flickered with curiosity. He watched the vet techs move around the room. He perked up when Maya entered. His tail wagged with more certainty. "He's improving faster than I expected," Dr. Hannah told Maya, smiling as she checked Shadow's vitals. "He's eating well, responding to his meds. And most importantly, he wants to live." Maya knelt beside the recovery cage and reached in to stroke Shadow's fur. "You hear that, sweet boy? You're a fighter." Shadow licked her fingers, then rested his head against her palm. First steps into the world, 10 days after that midnight rescue, Shadow took his first wobbly steps. It wasn't graceful. His injured leg still dragged slightly, and his balance was clumsy. But when Maya held out her arms and whispered, "Come here, baby," Shadow pushed himself forward, step by awkward step. He reached her and collapsed into her lap, tail wagging furiously. Maya cried, tears rolling down her cheeks as she cradled his small frame. "You did it," she whispered into his fur. "You're walking. You're really walking." From that day on, there was no turning back. Shadow was healing, not just in his body, but in his spirit. The first night home 2 weeks after she found him, Maya brought Shadow home. She carried him up the stairs to her apartment, wrapped in the same scarf that had once protected him in the alley. It was clean now, smelling of lavender detergent, but Shadow nuzzled into it like he remembered. The apartment wasn't fancy, just a small one-bedroom, with warm lights and a worn couch, but to Shadow, it was a castle. Maya had prepared everything. A soft bed in the corner, bowls with fresh water and food, toys, even a small sweater to keep him warm at night, but Shadow ignored it all at first. He followed Maya everywhere. When she sat, he curled beside her. When she moved, he trailed her like a quiet shadow true to his name. That night, as Maya lay in bed, she felt a weight pressed gently against her side. She opened her eyes to see Shadow curled beside her, his head on her pillow. She laughed softly and kissed the top of his head. "All right, just for tonight." He let out a small sigh, closed his eyes, and for the first time in his short life fell asleep without fear. Learning to trust again, Shadow's days began to take on rhythm. He learned when Maya woke up, when breakfast came, when it was time. For a short walk in the park, he limped still but proudly. Strangers sometimes stared at his thin frame, at the scars along his leg, but Maya didn't let it bother her. She walked tall. He walked beside her. Every sound still startled him. Ah! Slammed door, a honking horn, a running child. Sometimes he would freeze, drop to the ground, and tremble. Maya never rushed him. She would kneel beside him, rub his back, and whisper, "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you again." And he would breathe. He would remember her voice. And then he'd take one more step. The first bark one afternoon, while Maya was sipping tea by the window, Shadow suddenly stood up and gave a loud bark at the sound of someone knocking. It was the first time he'd made such a strong sound since she'd found him. Maya smiled. "Well, hello, brave boy." He wagged his tail, proud and alert. His voice had returned. Love in every corner. Maya hadn't realized how empty her apartment had felt until Shadow arrived. Now, there were tiny paw prints on the kitchen floor, a rubber bone under the couch, a bowl of kibble in the corner. She found herself humming more, smiling more, even after long shifts. Sometimes she would sit on the couch with Shadow sleeping across her lap, her fingers running through his soft fur, and think about the night she almost kept walking. It haunted her, not because she didn't stop, but because she almost didn't. "How many others did walk past you?" she asked him one night. He didn't answer, of course. He just looked up with soft, grateful eyes, as if to say, "It doesn't matter anymore." You came. People start to notice at the vet clinic. Everyone adored Shadow. "He's like a different dog," the receptionist said one day. "He's got this little spark now," said the tech who had first opened the door that night. Dr. Hannah, reviewing his final checkup, smiled at Maya. "You gave him something that medicine couldn't." Maya shook her head. "I didn't give him anything. He just needed someone to stop walking." A quiet hero. One day, Maya was walking Shadow through a crowded market when a woman stopped her. "Is that the puppy from the clinic's social post?" she asked. Maya blinked. "What?" "The vet clinic posted his story last month. The puppy left for dead. I read it and cried all night." "That's him, isn't it?" Maya nodded slowly. The woman knelt, reaching a hand toward Shadow. He sniffed it, then licked her fingers. "You're a miracle," the woman whispered. Shadow wagged his tail, then turned back to Maya. She knelt and kissed the top of his head. "No," she whispered. "You're the miracle." Reflections at midnight, exactly 1 month after she found him, Maya stayed up late, unable to sleep. She stood by the window, watching the street below. It was quiet, just like that night. Shadow slept on the couch, paws twitching slightly in a dream. The same street lamps cast their glow. The same wind rustled the trees. But everything was different, because now one tiny life had been changed, and in some quiet, Subtle way so had Maya's. She'd saved his life. But she knew, deep down, that he had saved hers too. A message for the ones who walked past Maya. Sometimes thought about those people who passed by. That night, the man with the phone, the teenagers, the delivery driver. She didn't hate them. She didn't judge them, but she hoped they would remember. That next time, they would stop. That maybe one day, a cry in the dark wouldn't be ignored. Final scene. Hope one morning, Maya and Shadow sat on a bench in the park. A small girl toddled over, her tiny hands reaching out. "Doggy?" she asked, wide-eyed. Shadow looked up at Maya for permission. She nodded. He let the little girl pet him, his tail wagging gently. The girl's mother approached. "He's so gentle." "He's a fighter," Maya said softly. "He was left for dead. No one thought he'd make it." The woman looked stunned. "I never would have guessed." "That's the thing," Maya said, watching as Shadow gently licked the girl's hand. "You never know what someone survived until you care enough to stop and see." Shadow curled up beside Maya, basking in the morning sun. He had once been broken, ignored, and left to suffer in the cold. Now he was safe. Loved. Whole. And all it had taken was someone who didn't keep walking.